everyone. I am Matt Williamson. We are not going to talk Ravens yet, but I have lots of Ravens research that I've been doing the last day or so. I'm going to have a lot for you. They're a very interesting team. It's obviously a game the Steelers have to get almost at this point. Also, my article for the week is out, and just to tease it a little bit, it is, Coach Tomlin said, yeah, we're going to make changes. Well, what changes should they make? What are logical stuff? So go check that out. Leave me some comments. A lot of you guys have written me back and very kind stuff, of course. So thank you. So let's get into this. Let's say they fire Matt Canada right now, or by the time you listen to it, he is out. Now, this is all, again, I'm not saying it's good, bad idea or not. Frankly, first of all, well, I think it is a good idea. Because, frankly, I don't think he's a good coordinator. But a huge thing here is you're now 2.5 years into his stint, close to it. And in order to keep everyone's effort, credibility, respectability, I don't know that you can go to TJ Watt and Minka and Cam, and I'm not just picking out defensive guys, I'm picking out leaders, and say, I'm okay with how it's going. We're just going to keep doing it. You know what I mean? Now, if you do let him go, it's still most likely a wasted year. I mean, that doesn't mean they can't get better. Of course they can. But in terms of scheme, you can't put in a new scheme. You can tweak this one. You can throw out the garbage of it. You can enhance what's good. But you're not going to implement an entirely new scheme. That's just the way it works. And is there really a great candidate in-house to right the ship? It's probably just addition by subtraction in terms of morale, changing things up, getting less predictable, changing your tendencies. But if you listen to me over the offseason, my big thing at the time, and I think it's coming true, is the real sin, flaw, whatever you want to say here in this whole process, isn't necessarily bringing Canada back. I wouldn't have. I'm on record of saying that in the offseason. Now, first off, 32 teams in the league, 16 of them changed their offensive play caller this offseason. Scoring's down. Most teams aren't happy about it. Big changes across the league. The Steelers didn't, keep Kenny as comfortable as possible. We know all the reasons. But here's what I said in the offseason. If you're going to bring him back, which I understood but didn't condone, what you have to do is bring in, and I'm just making this title up, call him whatever you want, an offensive senior assistant. Sort of like Flores last year, but more so the grizzled old coach that's been around the block, that he's not in charge of the running backs. He's not in charge of the tight ends. He's just a senior assistant or assistant head coach. Call him whatever you want. There's plenty of those guys that were available, that you could have in the room, influencing, kind of peeking over his shoulder too. But it's a fallback plan. If you get to this point, you can hand it to somebody that has done a lot of play calling or whatever. They didn't do that, and that to me is a problem. So now to Kenny Pickett. Let's assume calling this a wasted year is too rough. It's only October 3rd. It's only 4 games into a 17-game season. The season is not wasted. But next year is year 3 of Kenny Pickett's contract. And that leaves you one more year of window of a cheap deal. These things happen very quick, folks. And it also only leaves you after this year 1 season to figure out if you're going to pick up his 5th-year option or not. You have to make these decisions going into year 4. 2024 is year 3. These things, having a good rookie contract quarterback is a tremendous asset in this league. But if you squander a year or 2 of it, before you know, that asset's gone. So you have to think in that manner. And that is, do you pick up the 5th-year option? Do you draft one this year? Do you draft one next year? Do you go sign Kirk Cousins? You know what I mean? Like, you can't just sit on your hands, and you have to find out this information. I'm still a Pickett believer, but you can't have this product out there for the next 2 or 3 years and be cool with it. You know, and that's just how the world works. Now, another Pickett note, he doesn't look like he trusts what the coaching staff is giving him. He doesn't look like he feels prepared. He doesn't look like if he is buying into what they're selling him. And what I've said a couple times is, even if it's a good scheme, which frankly I don't think it really is, but if you don't buy into it, it doesn't matter if it's the best scheme in the world. And if it isn't taught properly, which I don't know if it is or not. I mean, none of us know what kind of teacher, you know, we might know some of the curriculum, but we don't know what kind of teacher Canada, the quarterback coach, the offensive staff, Tomlin for that matter. I get the hunch Tomlin's a pretty good teacher over history. But how are you selling your product, teaching your product? You know, that's a big thing to me. So that's my notes on that. Go check out my article. It's not about Canada and whatnot. It's about what other things, personnel moves you could do. Here's a couple other nuggets. By losing that game, they lost an 8% of their chance to go to the playoffs. And they're now at like 31% chance to make the playoffs. Predictability. AFC game, what the rest of the league did, et cetera, et cetera. And that's not exact science. These are mathematician prognosticators, you know, but right now they're at about 31% chance to get to the postseason. In week 4, Stroud had the 7th best total EPA amongst all quarterbacks in the league against the Steelers. You know, his entire game, not per play, what he brought to the table for the whole game was 7th best among all quarterbacks in the league in week 4. And Nico Collins was 3rd amongst all pass catchers, you know. So these guys played well, and the Steelers have something to do with that, obviously. You know, poor defense is something obviously to do with that. In my article, I talk about some offensive line changes. I think we've talked about it here as well. But one thing I thought was really bad in this game was a recognition of stunts and games, especially on the interior, especially Mason Cole. They were shocked that these guys are running stunts and games and things, you know, like pretty basic stuff that they did not pick up well up front at all. And I will say, Pat Meyer, the offensive line coach, is somebody I think is a very good coach. I've paid a lot of attention to his work. It's not working right now, but I don't think it's time to fire the O-line coach too. The world doesn't need to fire everyone in the world. I'll be back in a moment. Quick break. Here we go. Okay, so watching this game, this would be the last Texans podcast, but just some final notes. I'm done watching it. Time to turn a page. On to Baltimore. I did think Siamalu held up really well in protection in this game. You know, I talked about the stunt recognition problems on the interior. Well, his protection was really good. You know, that was, but not great, but it was a positive note that I didn't know on the first blush. Herbig, on the other hand, his protection was awful. It was really bad. And I'm going to give him a little bit of a pass. I mean, he's definitely more of a run blocker than pass blocker, but he struggled, and he was part of the recognition stuff with stunts and things. Go read my article for O-line suggestions. But boy, his protection was bad. I don't know if you realize this, but there was 59 offensive snaps. Broderick Jones got in for 51 of them. He played that much. He, too, was really bad in pass protection. Yeah, I mean, it's still a work in progress. That's the concern. That's why he's not on the field. Well, he had a really tough day in pass protection. Top to bottom, really bad day for Freiermuth, too. I mean, I'm sure you've seen clips of him getting ragdolled by defensive ends, which I don't know why they keep asking him to block them. Defensive ends, that is. But overall, contributed very little to the offense, Freiermuth. Shocking, to be honest with you. I'm not going to get into this deep because this is stuff that's in my articles, better laid out there. But this was another encouraging performance by Benton. He has to play more. He's still not playing enough to my liking. We'll get into snap counts here to finish up the podcast in a minute. But two other guys that had especially bad days. Pat Pete, looking bad. I mean, he's looking old. And Landon Roberts had a rough day too. And I think I mentioned that the other day. I mean, just picking on him. Not great for those two. Defensive snap counts is one thing I want to talk about here to finish up the show. They played 71 defensive snaps, and the defensive lineman snap allocation kind of went like this. Ogunjobi for 46, Adams for 41, Watts for 34, which is a high number for him, but remember Leal got hurt. Benton only for 29. You can probably read the tea leaves here that's a big thing in my article is Benton needs to play much more. 29 out of 71 snaps is not going to cut it for that guy. Leal only lasted 21, and Loudermilk played 13. On the edge, I guess because they were losing and didn't want to give things up, but out of 71 snaps, Highsmith played 63, Watt played 62. Those guys usually play less, and I do suspect less is more with those guys. Stay fresher. Highsmith had a very good game. By Watt's standard, he had a very bad game. By normal people's standard, he had a very average game. Golden was only out there for 13 snaps, and Herbig was only out there for 4. Of the off-the-ball linebackers, Holcomb played 63. Roberts played 42. Alexander was out there for 27. The safeties, Minka was out there for all 71. Neal was out there for 45, KZ for 34. I should probably know this off the top of my head, but I don't have a great reason why Neal was out snapping KZ. Is that I want to go back and look at that because I think that's been a trend for a couple of games now. They're very different players. Neal's obviously better against the run. They do play some big nickel with the three of them out there, but KZ's the better player to me. Corners. Mentioned Peterson had a rough day. Him and Wallace played every snap. Not uncommon for outside corners. Sullivan played 21 out of 71. Porter only played 10. Again, reference my article for that. Mentioned Peterson's not playing great. I think Wallace isn't playing great. Porter only got 10 snaps. Not enough. Not enough. So last thing, and I promise this is not in the same vein of what I asked you guys to tell me not to do, which is by Wednesday, Thursday saying, oh, it's just one game, time to move on. If you beat Baltimore, you'll be fine. No big deal. 2-1 into the bye, easy schedule. Because there's much bigger problems than that. I don't want to be that guy this week. But what I've been saying on the drive and other outlets, I was on with Mark Madden, I believe this to be true. And again, it's not talking out both sides of my mouth. Their tape, their film, watching the Steelers tape is way worse than their situation. And what I mean by that is the Bengals stink. The Ravens are atop the division, but they're not perfect by any means or a powerhouse. The Steelers are tied for second, but have the tiebreakers. The Browns are kind of a mess. There's a lot of really bad teams in the league right now. Did you watch the Giants on Monday night? The Patriots are bad. So their situation, their standing in the AFC and in the division is way better than what they're putting on the football field. The Steelers' tape is way worse than their situation, is how I've been saying it. Now, if they can get their tape better, their situation will get better, and then we can have some optimism. If their tape doesn't get better, none of it matters. All right, talk to you guys tomorrow. We're going to start breaking down the Ravens heavy here soon. Over and out.